Hi guys, thanks so much for watching Speaking of. I'm Stephanie, and today I have Jennifer Ferrebee, who is the founder, owner, and operator of Verde restaurants based in Charleston, South Carolina. And Verde is really cool because they are a fast casual restaurant focusing on salads and wraps, fresh salads and wraps, all locally sourced. And Jennifer is just one of the coolest, most inspiring people that I know. So I'm incredibly happy to be talking to her and bringing her on the show today. So thank you for being here.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always nice to get to catch up with you.
We just had a lovely conversation, and then we were like, oh crap, we should be recording all of this.
I know. Yeah. I think that we just had like our own private catch up interview. So now we'll let everybody else join in the conversation.
So tell me a little bit about Verde.
So Verde, as you said, we're a fast casual restaurant group. We're based in Charleston, family owned and operated. My husband and I started it, and we still are the owner operators today of all of our locations. We focus on fresh salads and wraps, house-made dressings. Everything's made in-house. We have like a wall of greens at the store. You can pick all of your toppings, pick your greens, and then pick all your toppings. And we serve our salads either like chopped up, so they're super easy to eat, which is like, I think, something that everybody like loves when they first come in, or wrapped up in a whole wheat wrap. And now we have 5 locations. We have 4 here in Charleston, and then we have 1 in Columbia, which actually just opened this year in May in the middle of the pandemic, which is a really interesting restaurant opening experience.
Oh my gosh. And do you have one, or were you going to have one in North Carolina?
We did. So we actually did have a restaurant location in Charlotte, and that has actually closed after the pandemic, just because it was in such a corporate area, and that store really like thrived off of corporate catering and office deliveries, which is like, I mean, in the area of Charlotte that it was in Valentine. That's really like the only population that it served, and that's not going to come back in full force for like such a long period of time that it just didn't make sense to continue. So I mean, during the course of this year, we have opened and closed locations. It has been crazy.
What was that like, trying to deal with everything that you do? Because like you said, you guys are the owner operator of all of these restaurants. So what was that like, trying to deal with that during the pandemic?
I mean, you just sort of like go into go mode, and I think like that's like sort of my natural default anyways, but I sort of like thrive in chaos, and like when things are like really, really busy, that's just by nature how, I tend to thrive. But you just do it. You just go. And I don't know. I think that in part, like, you don't really have another choice. So you just kind of keep going and keep going. And luckily we have like such an awesome leadership team and management team that like they're also the same way. So by like everyone's like nature of just like, we'll figure this out and we're just going to keep going, that you then find yourself 7 months later with a restaurant closed, one open, different styles of service. So much has changed, and it all is just like working.
You had to rethink everything. Verde's been around for close to 10 years. And so you guys had a really amazing setup. You knew every day what to expect, what to do. You knew who your
Right.
corporate clients were. And then during COVID, you have to rethink everything. So how did you guys what was that like initially, trying to think about how you're changing your service? And was there anything that you ended up starting that you're like, oh my gosh, this is really great?
I think a lot of it just sort of like naturally happened. Whereas like you just first and foremost, let me say that like we are very lucky in terms of being a restaurant, because we are fast casual. We do not rely on dine-in. Even if people were coming into the restaurant and ordering, most people were taking it to go, or like the thought of taking Verde to go does not make you change your full mind on wanting to dine at Verde or not. But in the same regard, like I don't think there was ever a single time where we sat around the table and it's like, whoa, our office delivery program and all of our catering deliveries and all of our dine-in, because not everyone was used to ordering online. I think only 15% of our guests used to order online, and now we're like, hey, our doors are shut, you have to order online. And so like I don't think there was like one moment where we're like talked about all these things. You just like, by the nature of when it all happened, we're just like in the restaurants. So you just start like immediately problem solving, and then you find that you're like all of a sudden doing stuff that you didn't maybe set out to do. I know that makes it sound so much like less exciting and like less smart because it just sort of happens, but like I do think sometimes things just sort of happen organically when you are close enough to it and have like your finger on the pulse enough to know how like to be making those changes.
Have you guys actually seen growth through this or gotten new customers that you didn't have before just because now they're trying something that is so easy to take and it is fresh and healthy and fast?
Totally. Like yes and no. We've seen different client base, and we've definitely seen like our online sales grow versus our in-store sales. Have our sales overall as a company grown this year? No, absolutely not. I mean, our sales are down just like any other restaurant because there is no true replacement for operating a restaurant normally. There's just not. Have we been able to pivot and still make it work though? Yes, totally. And have we replaced like, catering in our Fresh at Desk program with other things? Yes, but like maybe not in the same volume as when we had our full scale, like, corporate catering rolling, and we're, going to 10 offices a day catering. That is hard to replace even when you pick up new customers and new styles of business. And we started pop-ups, especially in the middle of the pandemic when we realized people really didn't want to go far. So we would like, just say, hey, Daniel Island, we don't have a store on Daniel Island, but we're going to be at Daniel Island on this day, order ahead of time and we'll bring it and you can grab your food from 11 to 11:30. And that worked really well. And that especially worked really well in the like true, I'd say like April, May. Definitely finding new channels and getting new customers, which is always exciting, and getting to serve new people. But, in the same regard, losing some of your like business that you're used to.
What was it like trying to deal with all of the things that the stresses that you have as an employer, because you guys did have all these stores with all these people, and then it's like, oh my gosh, not only are you dealing with changes in business, but like you have these people.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard, like having to furlough team members and lay off team members. Like that's like one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. We were just talking about like the phone calls. Like, I mean, I had to make, around 50 of those phone calls. Like, I can't imagine when companies have to make hundreds and hundreds of them. I learned a lot about stuff that I just like never thought that I'd have to learn about, like the unemployment system and filing for our team members and making sure everyone's taken care of. And it was definite. It's a lot. I just, kept remembering, and I don't know if this is right or wrong or indifferent, but I just kept reminding myself that like the circumstances that got us to having to even have conversations of furloughing team members, one, were by things fully out of our control. It's nothing that like we did as Verde that like drove us to have to close, 2 of the restaurants for 2 months. Like it was really like that was kind of like forced upon us. So that was, made it a little better. And then just like remembering that like I needed to do what was best for that team member too. And if I couldn't guarantee that they could work their normal hours of work, then the best thing that I can do for them is make sure that like we get them like safely, fastly, and securely through the furlough process and unemployment process so that they can take care of their family. Bringing team members back and everything's a little different. And I mean, it's been like constant. But I mean, I just also felt like we tried to stay connected to our team even during the process by having like, we'll have a call every week or so and anyone's welcome to hop on it and we'll just say what's going on so that what's happening. And I mean, I'm like personal always, but especially those few months was like, you all have my cell phone number. Here it is. Like, you need anything, just text me. Like, I don't want you to feel like you have to go through some process or department or whatever. Like, just come to me because I want to make sure everyone's taken care of. And so I think that kept me feeling connected to everybody, but I think also, made it as good as it can be, even though it's like such an awful thing to have to go through,
It's such a weird, like, who would ever think that you have to deal with this?
Ever. We'd never had an unemployment claim. We're 9 years in business and never ever have had like one that like we were having to actually like really pull off. So it's crazy.
It
But
makes,
here we are.
but
And
it's like, it's,
and then
it's so impressive to me that people have been able to adapt though so well. Like all these businesses have been able to just turn around and think of new ways to do business. And it's really impressive because it's a time that you really could just shut down, like as a human,
yeah.
instead of like you said before, that you actually found it to be like re-inspiring to be back and working that
Yeah,
hard.
at times. I do think though that's like ultimately when you're in business, like the key to any business is solving problems. That's what any business does. It solves somebody's problem for some product, service, whatever. And so by nature, in business, it's all about problem solving, and people that run businesses well problem solve really well and like really like to do it too, and like thrive when they can do that. And so I think that's why you're seeing so much like pivot and creativity to come out of this, because that's kind of what created that person to start that business in the first place. Was that like, I wanted a restaurant like this for me because there wasn't anything like it, so I'm just going to make it happen because it's how I want to eat, and there wasn't anything in Charleston like it, and I'm like, well, I think other people would have liked this too. And so same thing for like other people that start businesses, like they have some idea or some solution, and then it's like a series of solving 1,000 different problems that gets you to the point where you are. So then when something like this happens, you realize that like you probably have at some point become a little complacent, because at some point you do get to the point where you're kind of like maintaining the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's kind of nice every now and then, not like nice in the like, let's not do 2020 again nice, but like it is kind of nice in some ways to have something that shakes that foundation and reminds you that like, to keep ahead, you got to keep changing and doing stuff. When you're forced up against the wall, like you pretty much are by these like circumstances so beyond your control, you can either just like slide down that wall and sit, or you can just like push back and fight. And when you are responsible for 100 team members or commercial leases or whatever it is that you're responsible for, you don't really have a choice, just like think of every parent this year that like became a virtual teacher. Like they did it because you have to. And so it's the same kind of thing. I just think like resilience in humans is amazing. And it's always there. And when you don't really have a choice but to call upon it, you really end up like coming ahead with some really cool stuff.
When you think back in time to whenever you first founded Verde,
Mm-hmm.
if I recall a conversation you and I had many years ago, you went to a different city or state,
Yeah.
and you had something and you were like, why do we not have this in Charleston? And then you decided you were just going to start this.
Yeah, essentially like we were in DC one weekend, and it wasn't just like salad concepts, but it was like fast casual was everywhere. And I mean, Charleston didn't even get Chipotle until 2014, 2015. We started in 2011. And so we just didn't really have fast casual in Charleston at all. So when you go to we went to a city like DC, or we'd been in New York too, and saw fast casual was everywhere. At that point in time, we were young professionals in our 20s, working, didn't really like to cook that much, worked pretty late hours, inconsistent hours. We were like, this is awesome. Like, this is good food, but you don't have to be seated and served. And everything in the time at Charleston was definitely airing more towards fast food, which, you didn't really feel like people were still preparing food. It was more like coming out of a bag or whatever. And so just to have that world opened up and see that that's a style of restaurant was so appealing to Sam and I. Was like, if we had this, we would eat this literally like for dinner every night of the week. And so I don't know. I mean, we were also super naive. We'd never operated restaurants or owned restaurants, and we were in our mid-20s with really nothing to lose. So, we didn't really know any better than to open a restaurant. Like if you were a little bit older or a little wiser, like you wouldn't open a restaurant, because like they're such a hard business. It's a hard business model. And it's definitely such a labor of love too. But 80% of restaurants fail their first year. So there's like nothing on paper that's like, yeah, that's a good idea, we should do that. But being so young, I was just like, no, like I really want this type of food, and I want this, and I really think that other people will too. So I'm just going to do it. And I'm going to trust my gut that like I want this, so other people will too.
And so then what happened? You guys have this conversation, and then do you go back to Charleston and just quit your jobs, get the funding, and
I
just
mean, essentially, like literally on the drive back to Charleston, I'm like writing the business plan in the car, calling all of our parents, like, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna open a restaurant. And they're all like, "You're gonna what?" Like, no, you're not. What? And so we were definitely smart about it in some ways. We didn't quit our jobs, and it took us 2 years to find the space on King Street for the first Fair Day because we were very specific that it needed to be near the college. We wanted to be on King Street in between George and John. So if you know downtown, that's like a 4-block radius, but felt really, really that it had to be there. And so just like having such a like specific spot that we wanted to be took time to find space on King. And so while we were finding the space, we would just like come home from our jobs and work every night and just basically like Verde lived on our coffee table and it's all we would talk about and we would like conceptualize it. It's still weird to me now when like I hear someone talk about Verde or I see somebody like walk down the street with a bowl from Verde and I'm like, how do you know about that? It's this thing that like is on my coffee table. Like it's still like a pinch me moment sometimes, you know? We would just work on it at night in our spare time, create the concept, and then by the time we finally found the space, basically everything about Verde was ready to go. The name, the design, the menu. I mean, like 7 of the initial 9 signature creations are still in the menu. Wow. Which is crazy to me. But yeah, it was all really ready to go because we spent 2 years just working on it on the side, and then finding the space was really the thing that like pushed us forward.
That's so cool. And I'm not surprised at all that you see people walking around carrying your stuff because you have such cool marketing. And I love all of your saying.
Oh,
Everything I can't even like on your employment page, you call them rock stars.
yeah, or like living on a pear, all the like fun buttons. Like, yes, I mean, I think if like really I have any skill in life, it's puns. Me and Megan, who's our marketing manager now, I mean, I'm always like, we really need to share these text threads with people, like when we're coming up with a salad name, because we have to go really bad sometimes before they get really good. But we just like, we have so much fun with it. And it all started on our first birthday. You know, every year we would celebrate our birthday. We'd celebrate 365 days with salads for 365. That started because we wanted to, like, nobody thought we were going to make it the first year. I mean, really, even us. And so, like, the fact that we were open a year later was like, we've had a restaurant open a year and it's kind of working. What? We have to celebrate big because this is a huge milestone for us. So we wanted to do something big, and Sam's the one that came up with the let's celebrate 365 days for salads for 365. So we wanted to make it a big party. So someone's like, oh, you should have like buttons printed that you can give out. And that's when the puns started. And now they've just become like such a part of our entire brand and everything that we do. And funny, like a really big part of our culture too, because we just like found that, you know, at the end of the day, like we serve salads and like it's really important that they're made really well and safely because people do consume them and put them in their bodies. And it's important that the food is good and they have a great service and it's safe. But like, it's salad. Like it shouldn't be, we shouldn't take ourselves too seriously because like it's lunch, you know, it's food. It's not really supposed to be super, super serious and intense.
What is the culture like at Verde?
I mean, I think that in some way it's different in every store because, you know, people create culture and you can have core values and you can have everything that you want on paper. And we do have a lot of that. And we do have the ways that we like to act and ways that like we look for in hiring. But at the end of the day, I mean, I tell this a lot with like our managers is that if you walk in the morning and you don't say hi to somebody, that's our culture. Mm-hmm. It's not what's written down. So it's how everybody acts. So by nature, every building sort of has its own personality because it all has its same people. But I'd say in general, Sam and I realized a long time ago that like this is our livelihood and we work a lot and I love working, but I'll easily work 100 hours a week sometimes. And I really like it. And you can be in the restaurants a lot and especially when you're starting. And, but if we're going to work all the time, I really just want to be around people that I like enjoy being around. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know that we ever like truly identified that early on. Now we sort of call it the 2 beer rule when we're like hiring a manager. Like, is this someone you'd want to have more than 1 beer with? Because you'll have like 1 drink with anybody, but 2 is like,
A commitment.
like, yeah, it's a commitment, totally. And so we just sort of hired people that we enjoyed being around. And so by nature, like, it just sort of created a culture of people that just sort of had the same values and could get along really well.
As a person who used to manage corporate culture at a corporation of, more than 1,000 people, it should change. It should be different because those people are different. So even if they share these same values, the way that those
Mhm.
are lived out necessarily don't necessarily always look the same. So it's cool that you have the core values that give them like, this is who we are, this is what we expect, these are the standards, this is what Verde is. But then also know that they have the freedom to be able to be themselves and live that their way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I always say that like with service too. So genuine is another one of our core values because I think at the heart of us owning restaurants is the fact that like we just like we love hospitality. We love serving people. Like if you're in food and beverage, you're in it because you love it. Like you're not in it because you're not in it for any other reason except for that you love it because it's a hard business and it's intense um and people that tend to be in hospitality tend to stay in hospitality because I just think it's like what they were bred to do and it is a form of service. And so you're just like really love serving people.
Mhm.
And so that like comes from the heart. And that's a big part of like when I want people to come into Verde, like I really want them to connect with everybody in the store and me and Sammy, even if I'm not there. And so, but I feel very strongly that good service is genuine service. If like John is working at Verde and he's greeting our guests, like I don't want him to greet them in my words. I want him to genuinely greet them where they feel welcome, but I want him to use his words.
Mhm.
And if that means that like it comes off in a way that like is a word that would sound weird coming out of my mouth, like if I was like, "Hey dude, what's up today?" Like that may sound like weird from me, but if that's genuine from him, it's probably not going to sound weird. Obviously, it has to be like polite and appropriate, but I find that when you like people actually talk like themselves, it's just such a better connection, and that's what I want people to do.
That reminds me of Southwest Airlines, how their flight attendants can give the safety message in their own way. They're conveying the
Yes.
right
Oh my
information.
gosh. Yes. I didn't even really know that was a rule, but now I'm like thinking of flights on Southwest and like, yeah, that's such a good example.
Yeah, it's like their ability to exercise freedom in who they are.
Right. And make sure like, yes, these 5 key points have to be discussed because like people are getting on an airplane and
Whenever we were talking before about starting something new, starting hard things and being a person in business and, in your case being a woman in business, you talked about imposter syndrome.
oh yeah.
And so like I feel like everybody has that, but I was shocked to hear that you did, or that's
Yeah.
something that you could struggle with because to me, Verde is such like an iconic thing and you're so inspiring and just like, balls to the wall on everything you do. And I
Thanks.
can't imagine like, but it also is kind of refreshing to hear that even somebody who I perceive to be that way can have doubts on, at some point that it happens in life, not that you doubt what you're doing.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that like we were talking before about like you don't need like sometimes I think when you have that syndrome, like you're looking for some title or some like specific thing in your past that tells you you're supposed to be doing this. Like I didn't run restaurants before. I didn't come from a family that owns restaurants. Like I I didn't that I was in hospitality, but I wasn't in running restaurants. So like it's natural at times over the years where I'm like at some point in time someone's going to figure out that like I do not know what I'm doing or like the curtain's going to come down cuz like there are definitely days where I didn't. But the thing is that you just like you keep learning and then you always just remind yourself like I do know what I'm doing for us though cuz I've gotten us here. So like maybe what I'm doing is actually wrong for other restaurants, but like it's working for our restaurant and for our team and so I'm just going to keep doing it.
What is it like to look back then and really think about all the stuff that you've done over the last 9 years?
Oh my God. It's funny because I really do think back on some things and I'm like, well, no, we really didn't know what we were doing. Like, holy smokes. I think of like how we operated the first 6 months of Verde and I'm like, what were we thinking? But we were there every day and we were willing to learn every single day. And like every single day, it's like, what did we do that we could do better? And so we just like improved and we never thought that we had all the answers. So I've always seeked outside help and I like talking to people and getting advice. And I think I almost sometimes think that like thought that you don't know, you feel like you don't know what you're doing maybe helps you in some regard because it opens you up to looking at things you're doing a little more like a little more with the ability of like, could we do it differently or better? Because you don't ever think what you're doing is the only way to do something.
Okay. So, as somebody who's running this successful business with your husband, obviously, but you guys have a young daughter,
Yeah.
how in the world do you manage to do that? Because you have a toddler daughter, which is just, God, kids are always a million miles an hour.
They are, yes. I mean, we're lucky. We have like, we could not have a better situation. We've shared a nanny with a family in our neighborhood since both girls were 8 weeks old. And so they're 3 now. Like Millie has 3 parents and we're like so lucky in that regard that and she has a sister from this other family. So like we're really lucky in that regard that we've had this other family and it's like, Millie's like, her village here. But also, my husband's and I's roles in Verde are very different. And he's oversees more of like the production and the menus, like our seasonal menus and stuff like that. And so his work is when he's in the restaurants, it's in the kitchen and it's really usually early before anyone's there. And so we're kind of opposite schedules anyways. And then my work, whereas like I oversee everything, it's not necessarily tied to any specific location or place any day. So I can do it where, when and where I need to also. And I mean, God bless technology and phones. Like I know if I have a love-hate relationship with my phone, as I'm sure everybody does, but like it definitely makes staying connected and like, being in different places, like it definitely is a benefit in that regard.
What is it like trying to run a business with your husband?
You pick your spouse to be your spouse. Mm-hmm. And a business partner definitely has different like qualities than like what you would pick in a spouse. So you're always having to like learn each other. But I think more than anything is that you always have a filter with people that you work with. But when you are so close to somebody like your spouse, your filter goes away. And that's not always really a good thing in business. And so it does like require a lot of self-awareness of like remembering that, you will talk to your spouse and vice versa, like in ways that you just wouldn't talk to somebody else in business. So you have to like keep that under wraps at time. And that, in the same way that it can be really challenging to learn to work with your spouse, at the end of the day, it's, amazing because there's literally no other business partner ever in the world that is going home to the same family and has the exact same, like, not even like end game, but just like mission and drive of like what they're trying to achieve in their lives. Because when you come from a marriage, you already have those things in alignment because you're married, you have like your family values. And so we never like question who we are, how we want to act as at that level. And so that you always know you're in sync with, which makes the times where, it can just be challenging because, if you've had a disagreement over something silly at work, you're bringing that home, at the end of the day, you're both like fighting for the exact same thing for Verde and for our family.
You guys definitely must get along, must have a great relationship to be able to keep those separate. But like you said, know that you're still on that same mission together, which is really cool. I know that you have the values. It's just like, it's like finding a unicorn, to find somebody that you can like live your life with, but also live your business with. What if somebody that you worked with, maybe somebody who's the same age that you were whenever you guys started Verde, what would you say if they said, hey, we want to go me and my husband or me and my girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever want to go start this restaurant, what advice would you give them?
My biggest advice is that if you want to have a super successful business, you gotta be in it, and you gotta be willing to like jump with both feet. It can't be this thing you do on the side. It can't be like something you're gonna like absentee manage. I think Verde in part was successful its first year because Sam and I were in that restaurant from open to close every single day. Now, I'm not like proponent always that you should like work open to close every day, but that's what we did the first year. We were in there. I interacted with 80% of our guests the first year. And so very, very, very firsthand, I saw what worked and what didn't work, what they liked, what they didn't like. I got to meet them and know them. I still have great friends today that like I literally became friends with and met from making their salad for a year. And so I think I think that's it. Like if you're gonna do it, you gotta do it. You gotta be all in. I don't think it's something you can just dip your toe in the water in.
What makes you the most proud?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I think my relationship with um like our team, like our, you know, our core team. I think that relationship makes me proud. It's always a really honest and open one. It's a fun one. Like, I think that makes me proud. I think stuff like walking down the street and seeing someone hold a Verde salad, that makes me proud. It makes me proud when guests talk about how Verde was like a part of their journey to like getting healthier, or like learning a food that they would have never thought they liked, like trying quinoa for the first time. Like everyone knows what quinoa is now, but you know, 9 years ago, like it wasn't, everyone didn't know. So I think stuff like that makes me really, really proud. It also makes me really proud when I go in a restaurant and I just like watch our team interacting with guests, and like then our team interacting together. That's always awesome. And it's like, I didn't like do that interaction. Like I'm not like individually responsible for that. And just like, what, like, look at how great it is, you know?
What do you think would make you, you know, you're 30 years down the road and you like, what is like the mark of success? Like, okay, this had the impact that I wanted it to have.
What is the mark of success? Whoa, that is a hard question. I mean,
Everyone knows what quinoa is then, or
everyone. I mean, I don't know. To have a restaurant environment that people enjoy coming to work to have a healthy restaurant environment. I don't know what that is. Man, that's a good question. I mean, I would have to somehow be related to what I think are like the key core important things in life in general, which are relationships and health. And so it's somehow, I don't know the exact like pinpoint of what that is for Verde, but it's got to be, it's going to end up boiling down to relationships we've made through Verde with our community and health.
did you ever think when you were 10 or 13 that this is what you were going to be doing?
No way. My dad owned his own business, and I always said, I was like, I will never own my own business. I don't even know why. I was like, thought that like, I just was like, so like in my head, like, no, that's not something I'm cut out to do. And then it's just like hilarious that when this like spark came on, it was like I was going to do nothing else. And everybody around me was like, oh yeah, we always knew that you were
Oh
going
my gosh.
to. Okay. You know, like, and even my dad, he's like, of course, you always had that spark. And it's like,
Mhm.
oh, like, why, you know, it's just, I don't know.
What
But so
did you
no,
think
I
you
did
were going
not
to do?
think I was my very first job ever that I ever wanted to be, which is like hilarious, was an FBI scientist.
Oh,
You know, I think like I went and visited like the Smithsonian when I was younger, and I thought it was so cool watching them. But like on every like, you know, the like crest charts that you used to do when you were little, like your career day, it was always that's what I was going to be.
thank you
So
so much for being here and chatting with me.
this was awesome.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching. Bye.
Yeah.